Whenever I hear somebody talk about change, they talk about groups. I remember Angela Davis saying, "It's hard to do something alone," which is true. But unless you can quickly find like minded people, change begins with the individual, who inspires others and creates groups. I am one who upholds the individual. A lot of leftists, it seems to me, look at society from a bird's eye view. When asked about change, they talk about organizations and institutions. But what advice you should give is what the ordinary person can do. And that is just to speak up and talk to friends and family members and whoever else will listen. It's in these small footsteps that bigger changes come. Big victories are built on top of smaller ones. Frederick Douglass went on speaking tours for 20 years after escaping slavery, before the Emancipation Proclamation was made. Malcolm X took 10 years after being released from prison before he started to gain national attention. Thurgood Marshall got his law degree in 33, but Brown versus Board wasn't for another 20 years. Point being, change takes time. Takes time to change minds. It's interesting to me because I always thought this was obvious, but I've had conversations with so many people who think change happens in giant escapades. That Martin Luther King hadn't, in fact, been building up the event, the March on Washington, for a decade, and that even before him, there were others pushing to end segregation. Also, as anybody who knows me will quickly tell you, I'm not a huge fan of Martin Luther King, especially for this reason. His sit-ins and protests were just as performative, and by any metric, just as effective as any other form of protest other activists were engaging in that wasn't so dangerous. I never saw what was wrong with speaking tours and lobbying. That's what the abolitionists did and the suffragettes. They didn't do sit-ins or get beaten up by police, and yet they still accomplished what they wanted. It is true that the abolitionist Lovejoy was murdered, as were many abolitionists in Kansas, but they did everything to my knowledge to protect themselves. Why go to a protest in Charlottesville where you'll get beaten up or run over by a Nazi when you can just put a sign in your front yard? And people call this victim blaming, but if that's victim blaming, then so is putting a warning on cigarette cartridges. It's not my fault I got cancer, it's the cigarette companies for selling this product. Yeah, but you don't have to smoke the product. Likewise, you don't have to go to a dangerous event to create change, and you certainly don't have to hurt yourself to do so. All you really must do is speak up when you see injustice. And with social media, it's easier than ever. Start a YouTube channel. That's what I did. Of course, we don't control the algorithms. This is nothing new. As Noam Chomsky said in Manufacturing Consent, those platforms which people use to spread ideas are private companies and are inevitably going to handicap leftists denouncing the private sphere. It's not in their interest for us to win. So you need people like Stacey Abrams on the ground doing the slow, tedious work. You need legislatures and people on the inside sympathetic to your cause, or at least somewhat indifferent. It's interesting to me when people complain about Joe Biden for not enacting radical change. These same people will then in the same breath say that Democrats and Republicans are the same party. I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say that they're the same and then get angry when he doesn't do anything. What are you expecting? I hear them say, well, they're tired of the theatrics. But who isn't online? The only people who genuinely like Joe Biden are boomers offline. And I'm sorry, but both parties are not the same. Joe Biden is terrible, but no more so than any other president in history. And yet we've still had radical change. We ended slavery, gave women the right to vote, ended child labor in company towns, gave gay people the right to marry. We have never had a president refuse to concede the election. People say Biden is a fascist, but it's very clear they have no idea what fascism is. Fascism has nothing to do with conservative policies. It has to do with authoritarianism. Joe might not like Bernie, but he wouldn't try to steal the election. People claim he did. But if Joe could have done it, why didn't Hoover when FDR was running? Why didn't the South do it when Lincoln was running? So when you start to ask these questions, you find the so-called leftists trying to equivocate the parties are just Republicans in disguise. They start spreading far-right conspiracy theories about how the election was stolen from Trump. But to get back to my main point, social media is a powerful tool. It does have to be balanced with on-the-ground work like canvassing and registering people to vote, lobbying and striking, because again, we are not in control of the algorithms. Social media is a platform which is tilted against us, like so many things. So what's our strength? What can we take hope in? I hear a lot of people say, our numbers, but I don't. It is true that leftist policies are very popular, and as a result, Republicans have become increasingly authoritarian. However, focusing on our numbers, I believe, quickly gets you into the mindset of treating leftists as cannon fodder. Lay our bodies against the gears of the machine, as one protester at Berkeley said. It's extremely unethical to tell people to hurt themselves. First and foremost, because they don't have to. Our strength that we should lean into, is our intelligence. Fascists are delusional. Many of them, anyhow. It is true, as Jason Stanley said, that not all Nazis were anti-Semitic ideologues. Many of them were in it for power, especially Hermann Goering. However, a lot of them were delusional. When the Jews were being killed, it was often away from public eye, so it wasn't to appease the masses. Then what was the genocide for? Some of them must have believed. And of course, fascism isn't inherently anti-Semitic. Italy and Spain weren't initially. Fascism is first and foremost about power. But to achieve that power, you need to appeal to complete idiots. Poor white people make up the bulk of the Republican Party. What do they get out of Republican policies? Nothing. They are being duped. They bought into the propaganda that the real problem in the world isn't your billionaire boss giving you pennies, but refugees from Mexico also earning pennies. Scapegoating. That's why the Nazis attacked the Jews, and it's why modern Republicans attack Mexicans. But there is an advantage here. The delusional aspect of the Republican Party is their Achilles heel. They don't live in our world, and it's easy to beat a man at chess if he thinks he's playing checkers. Why did Hitler do the beer hall putsch? Why did he, after coming to power, attack Russia and open a two-front war? Why did he, after attacking Russia, attack Stalingrad? These are not intelligent people. The modern American fascist is currently dying of COVID to own the libs, but they can learn. Hitler learned from the beer hall putsch, and they have money. But we are smarter and learn much quicker.